Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm back finally with more Marvel Legend action figure reviews. Now, as you know, I'm a bit of a Spider-Man fan, and we've had a recent wave of Spider-Man themed action figures. And it's probably worth noting that this is not a Build-A-Figure wave, so there is no additional 7th figure by collecting all 6 of these, so you can pick and choose as you see fit. Now for me personally, I had to get all 6, I had to get the full caseload because I couldn't get the Scarlet Spider any other way, and that's one of the figures I most wanted in this set of 6. But having said that, I'm actually quite pleased with all 6 of these figures. There's some really interesting characters in here and some nice tweaks on old favourites. I'll cover each of these figures in turn on my channel, but I'm going to focus today on my most anticipated release of these 6 figures, which is the Scarlet Spider. Starting with the packaging, you can see that they've opted for the Spider-Man animated series branding, or the Toy Biz era of 5-inch action figures we used to get for Spider-Man figures way back in the day. Now, I've spoken about this many times, I'm a real sucker for nostalgia and I love this packaging. This takes me back to my warm fuzzy place when I was a kid, and I actually love the colours of this, I love the art style of the billboard, I love the illustrated image we have of the Scarlet Spider there, and to be fair, this is one of the Spider-Man characters who actually does justify being on this art card, because we actually did get a Scarlet Spider appearance in the original Spider-Man animated series. It was quite brief, it was right at the end, but it still counts, and I've always long wanted to have this figure in my collection. And I think the combination of colours and art style work really well for display and presentation. You can obviously put this on a hook, and you can put this on your wall and it's going to look pretty nice. And if we flip it and look at the reverse, we can see an enlarged image of what we see on the front of the packaging there, which is a really nice image actually, I have to say. Then we have some of the small prints. So not an awful lot going on here. This isn't really the side you're going to want to put on display, but nevertheless it's fairly consistent with what we used to get, and it's a nice touch. And upon liberation from his packaging, I have to say, first impressions, he certainly seems to live up to the anticipation. I think this is a very nicely presented figure, and the colours all look to pop in the right places, and it looks kind of fun. Now, the first thing I have to note is that this is not the first time we've had the Scarlet Spider in the Marvel Legends line. We actually got him with the Build-A-Figure Rhino from a few years ago. We then actually got an updated, repainted version of the same figure on a single card, but this actually came with an alternate Ben Reilly head and a slightly deeper, more metallic red paint, which is pretty nice actually. But I was never entirely satisfied with this figure, despite being quite happy at the time. There was just some little details, and there's something about that hoodie that just never felt quite right, mainly because of that ab crunch, I think, in the middle of it. What we have here is a brand new sculpt. So we have a brand new head sculpt, as you can see. This actually looks much more in proportion of what we see in the comic books. I really like these eyes. The only thing is these are painted on, they're not actually sculpted in, which is a shame. It would have been nice if I had that extra detail in there. As it is, it feels a little bit flat, but we do have a brand new hoodie piece, and this works really, really well because this is a separate piece. This is made of a rubber material. You can see they've actually added the hood as a separate piece as well, giving it a little bit more texture, which is great. It makes it look a little bit more authentic and realistic, which is lovely. But they've also painted in the tassels as well around the hoodie in white. That's really good. That makes all the difference. In the previous release, these were just sculpted in and were just painted blue. Here, they actually look and feel as if they're authentic tassels, which looks really, really good. I'm pretty happy with the proportions of the spider emblem or logo there. This looks pretty accurate to my memory of the comic books from all those years ago, and I think this looks really cool. I also really like that we see the bottom of the hoodie there is actually torn and ripped. Again, that's pretty accurate to what we see on page, so that's a nice little detail and an improvement over the first release. You'll notice that the utility belt is also brand new. This is a new sculpt. This is very different from the first release, and it's actually a separate piece, so it hasn't been sculpted into the body, so this slides over the body, so it can be movable if you need to put it in different poses, which is great. The detailing here is pretty nice, pretty simplistic, and the paint apps are fairly simplistic, but at least we actually have some decent paint apps here to distinguish it, which is great. Likewise, if we look at the spider gauntlets here with his web shooters, these are nicely sculpted, but there's not really much going on in the way of paint apps, which is a shame, because if it just had a slight wash running over these, it would make all the difference. As it is, they feel a bit plastic-like and a little bit simplistic for my tastes. But if we look at his ankles, he does have the ankle gauntlets, which are really nicely done. Again, there's actually some fine paint apps here, the silver buckles, etc., which look really good. And yeah, these are separate pieces that go over the figure, and it gives it a bit more visual interest and adds more depth and texture. So, looking at the articulation, there is a ball joint at the top of the neck, allowing the head to rotate 360 degrees. He can lean it left and right, and he can nod his head up and down. Now, this is a bit of a strange joint because it feels like you can go further than you actually can, and it feels a little bit limited. Now, I'm not sure whether he actually has a butterfly wing joint here. It looks like he does, but I'm not able to get an awful lot of movements out of it. That being said, he does have ball joints in the shoulders though, so that will allow the arm to lift up and out. There is the complementary bicep swivel as you'd expect, and there's a double pin at the elbow there, allowing that lower forearm to curl all the way back there, which is great. He's then got a standard pin swivel at the wrist, allowing the hand to rotate all the way around and hinge forwards and backwards. Then he has the advantage of that new ball joint in the top of the torso, which is really good. It's well hidden, which is great, and it allows him to swivel from side to side and lean left and right. He can also bend forwards and backwards with the aid of an ab crunch at the very bottom of his abs there, which look really good. Again, quite neatly hidden actually, which works really very well. So there's actually a huge range of motion here, particularly when it comes to leaning backwards. There's ball joints in the hips, the legs will kick out to the side, there's the complementary thigh swivel there, the leg will kick forwards, it'll go backwards, and there's another double joint at the knee this time, allowing that lower leg to kick all the way back. There's also another swivel at the top of the boot cut there. There's an ankle rocker, allowing the foot to swivel from side to side, but also hinge forwards and backwards. And then finally, just for good measure, they've also given him some toe articulation. Sadly, when it comes to accessories, he's a little bit light. He just comes with an additional 2 pairs of hands, 2 crawling hands and 2 thwipping hands, and we've seen both of these before. That being said, there's enough here to create a few distinct different poses and looks for the character. You can have him fighting, you can have him crawling, you can have him thwipping his webs, and it's going to look pretty good in the main. But it would have been nice if we'd had something extra thrown in there, perhaps that aforementioned Ben Reilly head sculpt or a brand new head sculpt. That would have been really quite cool. A shame they didn't include it this time around, especially for those of us who didn't want to double dip on that second release anyway. This would have been a nice opportunity to make good on that. Finally, as a very quick scale comparison, here he is standing next to the Jack-o'-lantern who's also in this wave, and you can see that he's the standard Spider-Man 6-inch scale size, which looks pretty good, and it works very nicely with other figures who are just slightly taller, as you can see here with Jack-o'-lantern, it's just got the edge on Spidey a little bit here, and I think that works really quite well actually, so this looks pretty nice. So, final score from me, I'm happy to give this figure the full 5 stars. I actually think they've done a really nice job with him. He's a significant update and improvement over the previous release. I really love the hoodie and the approach they've taken there to cover some of the articulation points, which is very nicely done. It's got a nice texture to it, that rubber feel as well. The way they've approached this is really good. Also, the head sculpt I think looks much nicer, even though it has been painted in. It still looks a lot more faithful to what we see on the page, which is great. And I think, you know, the accessories we get are fun. They're enough to justify this. It would have been nice if we had a few extras, of course, but I'm not going to remove a star for that. As ever, my perennial complaint with Marvel Legends is that they don't do enough in the way of paint washes, and this figure is definitely exemplary of that. But again, I'm not going to remove a star in this case because I think overall this figure definitely lives up to my expectations, which were set pretty high, to be honest, as they always are when we're talking about an update or a double dip of a figure I already own. I have to say this is superior, and I think probably the definitive Scarlet Spider I have in my collection now, and probably the best one that's been put out in this line for some time. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like and remember to subscribe as there'll be plenty more videos soon.